Hi, I'm Sarah Ann Stewart. I am a holistic health practitioner, and I am one of the passionate few. This was absolutely one of my most favorite interviews I have ever done. Omar was absolutely incredible at creating amazing questions that really pulled a lot of stories out of me that I have never shared, and I've been scared to share. So I'm excited that everyone gets to hear them and that he was able to really allow me to be open to sharing these experiences with all of you.
Welcome to this episode of The Passionate Few. It's your host, Omar here, and today we get to hear the incredible story of holistic health expert, Sarah Ann Stewart. And in this interview, we talk a lot about the power of mindfulness and what it means to truly be healthy, wealthy, get your business right, and get your mindset right, and how a lot of us are held back by stories that we don't reveal. So in this interview, we go deep into not only how hustle isn't always the answer, but about how getting the internal world right first with your health and your mindset can unlock everything else that you've been waiting for in your life. So with no further ado, I want to encourage you to sit back, relax, and enjoy the powerful story of Sarah Ann Stewart. Enjoy. So thanks for being on the show today, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me. It's
Yes.
so nice to have you here.
Yes, I know we've been trying to set it up for a while, so I'm so glad we made it happen.
So glad. Nice to be in the pool.
Yes. Get the holistic feel.
The holistic feel.
So let's get right into it. So for the audience that maybe doesn't know what you do, can you give us a little bit of context as to what you do now, and then we'll get into your story?
Yeah, so as a holistic health practitioner, I work with women and men shifting mindset around their health, their wellness, their well-being, prevention, long-term health and happiness. A lot of times we know what to do. We're oversaturated with so much nutrition information, but a lot of times what's blocking ourselves is ourselves, right? It's the mindset around health and wellness and why it matters and why it's important and why at the end of the day we can't buy our health back at a certain point.
True.
And so a lot of the work I do is preventing chronic sickness and preventing burnout and adrenal fatigue and stress and all the things that we face every day as an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah. So how long have you been doing that?
Yeah, so I started studying holistic health when I was young as a teenager because my father was diagnosed with terminal cancer. It was shocking to me because although they recommended certain Western protocols, he actually decided to go all alternative and completely change his diet, become vegan, and look into treatments in Europe and other parts of the world. And within 7 months, the cancer was completely gone. And the doctors were just shocked, but yet I was shocked that they didn't want to know more. They didn't want to know what he was doing or how he cured the cancer. They were just like, oh, must have been a misdiagnosis, which was shocking for me to see as this teenager, right? And so at that moment, I just became obsessed with holistic health and why are we not educated on these other resources and alternative modalities?
That's really interesting. So when he got diagnosed with cancer, what form was it? How severe was it? What stage was he in when he caught it?
Yeah, so it was actually a misdiagnosis, and
okay.
Luckily my mother, she was a med tech, and she recognized that it was actually bladder cancer, and was spreading. And so at that point, we had to look for alternative treatments because, again, back then, 13, 14 years ago, there wasn't that much information on cancer as there is today. There wasn't the World Wide Web of all this knowledge and people teaching about how they're curing their own cancer.
True.
And so, so at that point, we really just, it was kind of like, he went to the doctors and said, have you ever seen a miracle? And I remember this very specifically, and I was so angry. I was like, why aren't you doing what they're telling you to do?
Yeah. Wow.
And he was like, you're going to see one. And he just knew that he had the power of his mind to basically shift this disease. And it really became this profound experience in my life.
That's incredible. And you told me your parents were kind of like hippies growing up, right?
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about your, experience growing up, what your childhood was like, and what that hippie upbringing was kind of like.
Yeah. It's really, really funny when I look back, and I'm so grateful for it. I traveled the country with my father. He was a public speaker, talking about all things, the psychology of basically our upbringing and our childhood, and meditation and mindfulness and yoga. All these things that were very woo-woo back then, right? People thought we were these crazy spiritual
There's
hippies.
still woo-woo to a lot of people now, so
woo-woo.
back then even more.
Yeah, exactly. We were growing wheatgrass in our garage, and our house always smelled like sage, and my mom was, filling milk cartons with almond milk to make it not look weird to the other kids. So I grew up in this really, really beautiful kind of bubble, right? And the interesting part was at the age of 14, I started getting, I got into a pageant and I won Miss Photogenic, and then I won this modeling competition at a local grocery store, and then I was scouted to become a model. And within a week of basically transitioning this career as a teenager, I just started to develop my own eating disorder. So it was this weird sort of tennis match happening in my head where I was seeing the profound impact of food, but then also on the other hand, I was suffering myself from eating disorders that started at the age of 15. And so
wow.
It's interesting that you can be in a bubble, right? And you can be in this world, but then everything can shift overnight when you're putting yourself in a new environment in which you're not fully capable of really, just really being able to stand in your own power, I guess was the problem that I was facing, was I just didn't have the courage. I saw this dream and this vision of getting out of this small world and leaving, and I didn't have the courage to step away at the time and say, this isn't for me.
And at the time, I know you told me that they wrote a card saying you're going to be a star one day or something.
Yeah, I think all scouts do that, right? To probably every model.
Sell the dream.
Because I never became a star, and I never became a big model.
Yeah.
I did make a living as it, and it was my source of income for a very long time.
Right.
But yeah, it's funny when you're 15 and you're being told like, oh, you're going to be a star someday. You're attaching yourself to that, and then that's your goal. And so for a very long time, I chased this dream, and I chased this income and this lifestyle of partying and travel and all the things that I knew for a very long time weren't serving me. But yet I had a very hard time walking away from it and letting go of it.
That's very interesting. So what is it about modeling or being inside the modeling bubble that you think so many people encounter this? Because it's, you're not alone. This is an overwhelming majority. And I know in private you shared with me too that most models deal with some form of body shaming or guilt or eating disorders.
Yep.
So talk to me a little bit about when you were in the bubble modeling, what you've seen happen that maybe doesn't get shared a lot out there.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I think one of the most profound stories that really woke me up to this was when I was in a car accident. And I haven't shared this story openly before, but I was in a really serious car accident in Jamaica in the time that I was traveling and just living this life. And
How old were you at the time?
I was 25-ish, around then. And I remember thinking to myself, lying on the cement, getting in this rollover car accident, not knowing when the ambulance was coming in the middle of Jamaica, thinking I'm literally going to die.
Wow.
What am I doing with my life? Like, what is happening? Like, how have I been living? I haven't been living from a place of service. I've been living really from a selfish place. And the whole time I was in the hospital in Jamaica, getting transferred from hospital to hospital, I kept thinking, like, why have I been living this way? But then when I got back to New York, the first thing I thought about was, how do I get back into shape? All the swelling that was happening in my body, these bruises, I'm not going to be able to go in castings. This is the source of my income.
Right.
And even when my agency said, this might not be for you anymore, I went and sold my car and got breast implants because I was like, this is how I sustain keeping my business, right, as my body going. This is how I sustain, this life as a model and my income until I figure out what's next. And
so you literally had to sell your car to get breast implants?
Yeah, so it's like another thing that I haven't really shared. And I look back in a lot of shame and guilt. Like, I remember the phone call to my father saying, hey, and I never had called home for money. He was an entrepreneur. I knew how hard he worked for his money, and I never wanted to call home. And I said, can you sell my car? I'm in need of some money. And I didn't tell him why at the moment. I got breast implants to basically just keep the career going long enough until I found something else.
Wow.
And the problem with that, and the problem I see with eating disorders and addiction, is that you're so addicted to the pain. You're so addicted to the struggle. You're so addicted to the challenges that you're facing that you're just not willing to see anything else. I'm not willing to see that I, had gone to school and I got really good grades and I could have changed careers and I is extremely, versatile in a lot of other things, but I'm not willing to see any of that because I was just so in it and surrounded by this culture that I believed was my source of happiness, which was all false and all fake. And I just kept pushing myself and pushing myself and pushing myself until I really did hit rock bottom, and I had an addiction to Adderall, addiction to laxatives. I was told by a doctor, you will not survive if you continue this way.
Wow.
And I left everything. I turned my social media off, rented my apartment out.
So you were making a full-time living with this modeling career.
Yeah, I was living, right? Like
Yeah.
I wasn't like saving money or anything, but it was definitely like this was my path.
Yeah.
This is how I was living. I was getting to travel the world. I was getting to do quote unquote fun things and go to clubs and party and
which wasn't as fun as it looks in photos, right? Yeah.
And sustain my life in New York, which is very expensive.
Right. Yeah.
And I left it all. But the funny thing is what I tell all of my clients now and a lot of entrepreneurs is that your mind goes with you everywhere you go. So I thought I could run. I thought I could run away from it all and I would be okay. The interesting thing is my mind went with me across the world. So as I backpacked for a year and I kind of took a break and I separated myself from this world, my anxiety got worse. My relationship with my body got worse. I started to gain a lot of weight. That didn't feel good, right? And so I hadn't fixed my mind. And so the doctors were saying, oh, you're physically better, but I wasn't actually physically better because your mind and your body aren't separate.
Right,
and
they're
so
one.
the emotional was just as damaging to my physical. And I knew that if I went back, I would go back into the old damaging patterns. And so I was blessed that I met someone, his name's Chandresh, and he's from Break the Norms. And he said to me, you must unlearn all the ways you were taught to suffer. And
I love that. It's powerful.
Statement changed everything for me.
Say it again for the audience.
You must unlearn the way you were taught to suffer. So he said for your whole life, and mostly this last 10 years, you've been taught how to suffer. You've been taught how to be addicted to suffering. And now we must unlearn and pull back layer by layer by layer. And he's like, I'm not going to do it for you. You're going to do it yourself. And I'm like, but I want the magic pill. I want you to tell me what to do.
How much is it?
How much is it? How can I pay for it? What can I sell to get the answer, right? And I think so much of us do that. Like, what can I buy? Quick fix. No, this is going to take a long time. He said, this is a journey. This is a lifelong journey. And we started with meditation and mindfulness and just pulling back the pieces and the stories and really looking into my own self-worth. What were the childhood programming that had happened where I didn't feel worthy of a life that I truly loved, one that really made me feel happy, relationships, career, lifestyle, health, well-being. And he was one of those people, and I hope to be this for other people, where he had so much unconditional love, regardless of where I was in my path, that it allowed me to truly step into my own space of healing. And when you have someone that believes in you, regardless of where you are, it's such a profound,
empowering feeling. Yeah.
Profound, empowering feeling.
You have permission to go from where you are to where you want to go.
Exactly.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Exactly.
Because if you can accept where you are, you can accept how you move.
Exactly.
Okay, so let me ask you this. When you were in modeling, what do you think it is that causes so many of these models to fall victim to these disorders? Is it the pressure from the industry? I mean, you've been in it. It's one thing for people on the outside to theorize, but when you're in it, what is that pressure really like? And how soon did it begin for you?
Yeah, it started literally within a week. I remember I was playing a lot of sports and I was this tomboy and I had never wore makeup and I never wore high heels and I actually had to go take classes on how to do my own makeup. And
so this modeling thing just randomly one day in a supermarket took you in a whole new direction.
Yeah, it was like the minute that I signed with an agency in Chicago, it was instantaneous eating disorder. And because I was standing there comparing myself, and I was much heavier at the time than all the other models.
And you're a teenager at that time?
I'm a teenager. And
12, 13?
I was 15.
15.
And so the beautiful thing is right now we have the opportunity through social media to start shifting these beliefs around who we follow, what we buy. I mean, we're as consumers can really shift this conversation because what we put our money behind is really how companies respond. And I believe that a lot of companies truly are shifting these quote unquote normal, what they believe normal beauty looks like. But it comes from our childhood. Like we're given Barbie dolls as children and say, this is the most beautiful girl in the whole world. And we're carrying them around and
you dress them, you play with them.
You
it's all you see.
And you see and they're blonde and tall and have big boobs. And so that's what our idea of beauty is. And so it starts with childhood. It starts with the conversations with our children. It starts with shifting these mindsets. And a lot of entrepreneurs that I talk to that have young girls are like, where do we start, right? Because it's such an ongoing problem, because today every single woman has access to Photoshop. We all have access to these things that we can manipulate on Instagram and make it look like we have this perfect life.
Right.
And I did that for a very long time. I made it look like I had this perfect life. And then when I met my husband, he was like, so you're basically like hiding your truth. You're hiding your story behind your current businesses. Why don't you actually tell people what's really going on here?
Right.
And he really empowered me to say, okay, the businesses that I was running, I was hiding, behind my truth. I wasn't talking about it. He's like, this is a story that needs to be told. Like, you've lived in pain for so long, and so many women can relate to you, and why aren't you sharing? And it took me a long time and a lot of work on myself to get to that place.
Nice. So when it comes to your one-on-one coaching clients, because I know you also offer, various programs, which you guys can check out in the description below. But when it comes to your coaching clients, obviously you've dealt with a lot of high-level entrepreneurs, peak performers. Yeah. How important is it to have these types of conversations and to really understand what's blocking them mentally in their diet? What are some results you've seen for people? Yeah. Because for a lot of people listening to this, they might be like, oh, that's interesting, but maybe not actually go act on it or apply it. So why do you feel this conversation is transformative to people if only they'd give the chance to truly listen?
Yeah, so what I find with entrepreneurs is they're pushing for the money, and then they buy all the things that will make them healthy, like the hyperbolic chamber in their home and the saunas, and their house is stacked with supplements, but they're not using anything, right? And so it's like, well, why aren't you? And what is the block that's happening? And what is the story that you're holding? And I think that's the most important part, is like, what are the stories behind why you're not taking care of your health and your well-being? More than anything. And what I found, and this is whether it's health or whether it's entrepreneurship, it doesn't matter. The greatest struggle that we often have is ourselves, right? And so we block our own well-being, we block our own health, we block our own abundance, we block our own relationships, the best things in our lives, because of the mindset of what we've been taught. And so we kind of have to, there's a different step process, but I believe the first part is the mindset, right? Looking within, and that comes through mindfulness, meditation, really connecting with where are your triggers, where are your habits, what is not serving you. And then secondly, like, who are you surrounding yourself with? And, this is talked
so
about
important,
over and over and over again. But
that's why I enjoy your guys' mastermind so much.
Thank you. Yeah, we love having you. It's really everything. It's like, who are you surrounding yourself with? Who's in your energy field? Who's impacting your daily decisions? Like, all of these things are just as important too. And so those are the two pieces that I work a lot with.
So when it came to you turning it around, obviously you were in the modeling career. What was the day where you said, you know what, that's it, I'm fed up? Because I'm sure for a while you flirted with the idea.
Yeah, I flirted with it for a long time. And the universe was like throwing things at me, like the car accident, and I went to India and had this profound awakening, and I just kept coming back, and I was so scared to walk away. Like, what am I going to do with my life? What is my identity?
Yeah, because that's all you knew for so many years.
Who am I if I have nothing? Who am I if I have nothing? Who am I if I have no friends, if I leave my agency, if I, walk away from New York City, who am I then? And when you have to let go of everything and wipe the slate clean, that's terrifying.
Right.
And only in the depth of rock bottom and destruction do we literally have to wipe the slate clean and say, what opportunity do I have for new? What opportunity do I have for other things to come in? And so it was that very shameful call from the doctor's office where I had to call home and tell my parents, like, I'm really sick and I need some help. That really struck a chord with me, because they have such a belief in holistic health and mindset and all of these things I was taught as a child. And I literally kept lying and pushing away the truth from them and not really sharing with them how bad I actually.
Which they must have been blown away, because they're like, Sarah, we taught you all this stuff. How do you not know what to do? Yeah.
And
it's interesting.
And my father was always very much, his motto was, are you happy? Like, if you're happy, go for it. He never pushed me to go to college. He never pushed me to do anything. He was just like, if you're happy, continue. And I remember when I called him, he was like, you must not be happy anymore. And I'm like, I'm not happy anymore, and I don't know what to do. And it was, it's those shameful calls where you have to call the people you love and
be honest
and finally be honest and say, and you dump the Adderall down the toilet and you throw the laxatives out regardless, and you start to get help. And that's a tough place to get to. But I also don't think that you have to get to that place to make change. And I think that there is profound opportunity now with connection and mentorship and community and friendship and following the right people on social media and being inspired all the time, where we don't have to get to that place of deep, dark pain and rock bottom to make a change. And what I've seen culturally is one out of every 200 women and one woman every 60 minutes is dying of an eating disorder.
Wow.
And that statistic is just not okay for me.
Yeah.
And it's just shocking. And that's why I think, do I have the answers? No. But I think the more that we open the conversation up and offer support to everyone going through challenges and having these sort of conversations, do we allow other people to start to take responsibility? Because it's not necessarily our fault that we're programmed by social media and conditioning, but it is our responsibility to make a change if we want.
Absolutely. And two, with the advent of social media, you have people comparing themselves to other people,
Right.
especially the younger generation, their
Right.
teens and 20s.
Right.
They have no gauge of popular culture other than what's on their phone, and you can't regulate that.
Right.
So they see that and they're like, man, I need to be like that to be accepted or to get a lot of likes.
Right.
And so that ends up raising them more than their parents or more than positive environments
Right.
around them.
Right.
So talk to me a little bit about, like, when you say stories, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
a big theme is that, we all have stories, maybe limited beliefs about money or business or what we're capable of. With health, certainly that's the case.
Right.
Talk to me a little bit about examples of stories, either in yourself or with your clients, that you've seen like a pattern of the story run, and then how they shifted or how they turned it around.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I see a story a lot with entrepreneurs that their worth is defined by how much money they're making. And
Yes.
so that's what's driving their decisions all day long versus I love myself enough that I'm going to actually take care of the physical body that I'm in that actually carries me throughout the day. And so they're being driven by this,
Money,
and
achieve,
car
get,
and
yeah.
house and all these things, which great, chase those things and go and have dreams and so forth. But also
Right.
we have to become very conscious of what are we sacrificing for
I love
those
that.
things. So if you're sacrificing your health, you're sacrificing your relationships, you're sacrificing your well-being for that story because there's a childhood story that maybe you were poor and that you're not worthy of anything unless you make X amount.
Right.
That's what we have to become conscious of, those type of stories, because I found that when people truly start to believe in their own self-worth and this place from self-love is which I call it, instead of sabotage. So a lot of times we're like, oh, well, I love myself, so I'm going to eat that pizza or drink that diet soda or go party all night.
Live
And
your
I'm
best
like,
life. Yeah.
I'm like, that's a story.
Yeah.
That's not actual self-love. That's a story. So let's shift that story and say,
Yeah.
okay, what's true for you? What is actually coming from a place of self-love, self-worth, self-esteem, self-confidence? And I found that when people really do start being mindful, meditating, taking care of their health, their businesses actually grow. Because when you make one decision from a place of clarity, it completely changes everything. And you get that clarity and that intuition from stillness.
I love that. That's powerful. Now, the reason that I wanted to harp on that point is because it's really interesting. So many people, entrepreneurs especially, they say, well, I'll sacrifice now, right? I'll stay up to late nights, not get sleep, eat crap now, but one day it'll be worth it.
Yeah.
So what do you say to people like that who are in that situation?
I've pulled the all-nighters. I've thrown my computer across the room at 4 a.m. Like, I get it, and I get that it's hard to break that pattern. I think it's looking at what is your 1-year goal, what is your 10-year goal, what is your 20-year goal, what do you want for your life, and what are you, just coming back to like, what are you willing to sacrifice and what are you not willing to sacrifice? And I think when you get really clear on where the stories are coming from your childhood, from media conditioning, from the people you follow, you'll be able to start to shift that conversation. Also, like, a lot of times I find that people are chasing other people's dreams. And I'm like...
What do you mean by that? Elaborate a little bit. Because I think I know what you're saying.
Like we follow people on Instagram and we're like, I'm like, oh, I want that life. And then you get it and you're like, actually, I didn't want that. I'm still not happy. Right? And so there's this correlation where increased wealth doesn't actually make you happier at a certain point, right? There's a lot of freedom that comes from wealth, But I think we have to start looking at, our own internal truth. And you get that through mindfulness, and you get that through meditation, because only you know what's truly going to bring happiness and fulfillment and joy. And for me, that's friendship, community, my relationships, my family, and then having the freedom to travel and do the things that I really love. But it's not an arbitrary goal. It's like weight loss, right? Like you're like, when I get to 110 pounds, I will be happy. And then you get there and you're still unhappy.
Right, because you could do more, it could look better, you have cellulite or whatever.
And the story that I'm still unworthy is still there. And so with me, it was like with the implants, I was like, once I get the implants, I'll be happy again. No, didn't work. Like once I get the nose job, once I get the Botox, like all those things didn't actually bring me happiness. And I'm not saying, like, I'm not telling your audience, don't go do those things, but I'm just saying that for me specifically, there was so much pain underneath that I had to deal with. And so looking at that, what are the stories? What is the pain? What is the frustration? Where is the anger coming from? And when you heal that, sometimes what you're chasing isn't what you would be chasing based on someone else's Instagram feed.
That's interesting. Now, what about people who might be listening to this and they say, well, you know, because I'm sure you've encountered a lot, I know I certainly have, where people, you know, they might do well financially or with wealth, but they look in the mirror and they realize, like, I'm not happy. Like, hey, I'm making a ton of money, but I'm not fulfilled. It's not aligned with me. Or maybe they're broke and they're trying to figure it out, right? At every level, this exists, the sense of unfulfillment or unease or disalignment. Can you talk a little bit about, you know, important, like, first takeaway, like step 1, step 2, step 3 for somebody who wants to find their purpose or find clarity or find more meaning in their life or their business or their impact? I know you talk about mindfulness and meditation.
Yeah.
And for those listening, I would really encourage you to pay close attention to the dialogue here. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, say someone's lost, they're not familiar with meditation. What would be your best recommendation working with top performers for like step 1, step 2, step 3?
Yeah, such a great question. This might be a little controversial because because everyone's like, take in more content.
Right.
And I always say, for 7 days, 14 days, whatever it is, just take a little bit of a break from everyone else's opinion, from your mentor, your coaches, your, you know, all of the different things you're listening to. Like, just take a little break and really start to connect within, because deep within you, you have that answer. I mean, based on everything you've gone through, no one else is in your body. No one else has had your journey.
No one else can feel what you're feeling.
Can feel exactly what you're up against, what you're facing, your frustrations, your pain, and what you want to create and what's going to bring you aliveness and joy and inspiration and happiness. Like, no one can give you that answer. And I know this is so cliche, right? Cliche. But I think the missing part is we do the vision board and we like write all the things we want to have, but we're not focusing on how we want to feel. And we're not focused on like, what feeling am I actually chasing? Because behind all of that, you're actually chasing a feeling. And so focusing literally internally and saying, what do I want to feel every single day waking up? What does that look like for me? And then once you have that vision, go and chase it and reach out to your mentor and your coaches and how do I create it? But I think we have so many ideas as entrepreneurs and we're getting so much thrown at us.
Especially nowadays,
Yeah, we're like, do a podcast, do a TV show, do, you know, like start this business, start a blog, write a book. Like there's so many things, right?
Which is interesting because you're writing a book.
Yeah, it's been a long process, but I am. What do you actually want to do? What do you want to do? And I think that's the struggle so many of us face. And so starting with, quieting your mind. And you don't need money to quiet your mind. You don't need a lot of resources. You literally need to just sit and quiet your mind and trust whatever comes to you. And then I also find like you don't need money to journal, free flow journaling. You don't need money to brainstorm and take a day of silence and take a break and separate yourself. These don't cost anything.
Right. Just time. Just the willingness to do it.
The willingness. And then the willingness to have the courage to step into whatever answer comes to you. I think sometimes we're jumping on other people's answers because we almost subconsciously know we're going to fail.
Yes.
Because we're scared of what we actually want.
Yes.
And so when we say, this is actually what I want and I'm willing to fight for this dream, that's what makes the difference.
That's where the magic happens. Now, why do you think most people don't go for it? Because there's a lot of people, and I have personal friends who have told me they run into the situation where, you know, most of them financially do tremendously well, but they're not fulfilled or they don't have that they just don't feel alive. They feel more weighted than weightless doing what they do. Do you find that indeed, like, people taking the action, like imperfect action, when the thought comes to them is important? Or I guess what I'm trying to get at is, like, when do they know, aha, that's it, when it comes to them? What is that trigger that you've seen works?
Yeah. So whenever I'm talking to my clients, it's that moment that just it lights them up. They look so alive and so excited. And the interesting thing is that that's a hard place to tap in ourselves, right? Like,
especially if we're not used to it.
Right, especially if we're not used to it. And we're scared to feel alive.
Right, yeah.
Like, most of us don't go out and say, life is great, things are amazing.
Right, yeah.
Because everyone else is suffering, and we're scared to talk about the fact that life can actually be good.
Right.
And we are so addicted to struggle. In this country, we are so addicted to the struggle that to think life could be easy, for me too, I'm like, I was having dinner with, like, 3 years ago, I had this profound moment where I was having dinner. There were 6 girls. We were sitting around. We were all bitching and complaining about how life was hard and we were struggling. And one girl at the end of the table who had, like, this business and this, basically had her life together. She's like, guys, it doesn't have to be so hard. And we're all like, what do you mean? Life is hard.
Easy for you to say.
Easy for you to say. And like, that moment was so profound because it's so simple. It was like this aha moment of, you're right, it doesn't. And why am I making it so hard on myself? And I have this wound and the story that behind my success, I want to, like, have the struggle. Like, I need to show the struggle.
The story.
Story. Like, I don't want anyone to think things were just handed to me. And that's my story, but we all have our different stories. So for me, I never want someone to just think, oh, she was handed these things.
Yeah.
Like, I want them to know I struggled through it.
Yeah.
And I've learned that doesn't serve me. Because I can create much faster when I think it can be easy and flow, and I can be around other women who are creating profound things and creating communities of women who are really doing amazing things with their lives. And so it's something that has taken me a lot of work with my own coach to basically break that wound and that story. But we all have our own, and only through looking within and saying, what's the wound? What's the story? Why is this so hard? Are we able to shift?
So where do you think most people's limited stories come from? I mean, is it upbringing a lot of the time? I mean, what is it that plagues so many people from all over to be held back by their own beliefs and they don't even know it,
Yeah. It's such a good question. And as we look at subconscious versus subconscious patterning versus conscious decision making, so much of our decisions are being driven from our subconscious mind, which, up to 95%. And so even if we consciously want to make the right choice to get up every day and put effort into our business, we might fall back into those old patterns because of our subconscious stories. And so it's hard to identify exactly where they're coming from. And that's why I love meditation and journaling, and I love free flow writing, because we actually are pulling parts of the subconscious mind to the forefront so we can become very clear on where the patterns are coming from. I would say most of the time I see it coming from childhood. And that doesn't mean that we have to go back and relive trauma. And for some of us we do. And some of us we have to really dive in with a therapist and dig everything up. But a lot of times it's just reframing. It's looking at what our story that we're currently holding and reframing it in the moment. For my clients specifically, there's a lot of work on my doctor knows best, my health coach knows best, my therapist knows best.
They outsource
They were outsourcing our truth. And so we go into reframes around, I truly know what's best for me. I know that, I know what decisions I need to make for my health, my well-being, whatever it is that their goals are.
Gotcha.
But just looking at those reframes, like how do we up-level our lives with a new story that is more empowering? And so often we know not what to do. We're told, don't do this, but we're not told that new story. And so I say, if you don't know it, look within and say, what feels better for you? And so even with diets, like there's a million diets. We go from one to the next to the next to the next. We're giving away our power.
Right.
And so a very simple reframe is, again, I know what's best for me, and I know what will work, and I'm the only person living in my body, and I'm not going to trust in all these other things, and I'll use my body as this beautiful experiment to figure out what works and what doesn't.
So you'd encourage testing it then, testing different things and playing the long game.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, because I want to get into it, and I know a lot of times as a model, you hid your truth for a while.
Yeah.
And then lately with your new business ventures that you've been helping people with all over the world, you started to incorporate your story and reach even more people because they're like, oh, hey, that's me too.
Yeah.
But before we get into that and talk about copywriting and what you're known for and how you're growing that, I do want to do some more examples for people out there that might have their own disempowering stories or beliefs with possibilities of quick reframes. So if it's cool with you, I have this idea.
Yeah.
What if I bring up limited stories and then you tell me like an opposite empowering one?
Okay.
How does that sound?
Let's try it.
Okay.
Let's play with it.
So I could never make that amount of money. It would take forever. Or I'm not capable, or I can't afford that, right? That repeating dialogue.
Yeah.
How would you flip that story to a more empowering one?
Yeah, so a simple, and this comes back to affirmations and mantras and just reprogramming old belief systems. So a very simple affirmation around that is, I feel worthy of making X amount, or I feel worthy of having the life of my dreams, or I feel worthy of having the exact X, Y, and Z. And just literally changing the dialogue in every single moment, which change the looping patterns, which actually we see with meditation actually rewires different parts of your brain, which decreases anxiety, decreases depression, increases self-compassion, self-love, self-esteem, self-worth, all of these things. So when we're literally just telling ourselves a very different story in that moment, it begins to shift everything and rewire. So then it actually impacts your feelings, your emotions, and then your behavior.
And so it's not just a pseudoscience, it's actual science.
Right.
There's actual measurements that meditation and mindfulness do have a physical effect on your...
Exactly.
Wow. And psychological too. So what about the story of, I'm not in shape, but I could never be in shape? You know, my family's overweight. I've tried so hard. I've tried this diet. I've tried trainers. Nothing works. Every time I lose weight, I gain it back. I'll never be in shape. It's not even worth it anymore. I'm getting older. It's not even worth it anymore.
I hear this every day. Every single day. And what's so funny is when you look at, so a lot of times I actually show them the science behind this, and that your genetics actually don't dictate the outcome of your life. Because what happens is we're using all of these stories to validate our behavior.
I'm big boned.
Right, I'm big boned, so I never can be healthy.
Yeah. And someone said one time that they've never seen a skeleton with big bones.
Yeah.
You know, how interesting.
How interesting. Well, also this idea of that my metabolism is decreasing over time, and I'm, of course I'm gaining weight. And so this is one where I'd say, well, your metabolism only decreases 1% to 2% every 10 years, which is such a small amount. And if you increase your muscle mass, the amount of protein you're taking, you actually can increase your metabolism from the time you are right now. Next year, you could actually have a faster metabolism. So it's debunking these beliefs and saying, why are we holding on to these stories that no longer exist and aren't proven by science anymore? We can actually prove the opposite now that we have more research and we have more science. But with that simple one, again, it's just looking at, okay, I'm worthy of having the body that I love. I'm worthy of having the life that I love. I'm worthy of, creating a lifestyle where I can, and what do you want to do? What is your why? And so hike every day, play with my kids, be around when they have grandchildren. What is the reason that's driving and motivating you to sustain this belief system? And then what is the opposite of that? So looking at you're sustaining it based on what you've been told as a kid. Probably your mom said to you, you'll always be big boned, or you heard on the, I hear this all the time. I heard on the, on the playground that I'm always going to be that, the fat one, the fat girl. Right. And I'm that's a story from when you were 5 years old. How do we let that go and reframe it where today you feel empowered to live your life? And the thing that hurts me more than anything in the world is when people use their weight as an excuse not to live their life. That's the most painful thing for me to hear when I, talk to people on the phone and I'm you're not going to live your dreams. You're not going to live your life. You're not going to go on that trip. You're not because of your weight. And I know that feeling because I've not gone out at night because of that, or I've prevented my own life from existing because of my own fears around my body image, and that has to shift culturally. And I think we're empowering women more and more every day to shift that belief, and men.
I love that. Yeah, that's true, because a lot of men are afraid to be vulnerable and they'll never share this stuff.
And they're taught from when they're from their childhood. Avoid, avoid, avoid. Get up, be strong.
Be tough, rugged, be a man.
Yeah, be a man. Men don't show their emotions. Men don't cry. And then we have no compassion when a man actually wants to show up and explain how he's feeling. And it creates this cultural, we're both playing into it. And on both sides, we need to start shifting and saying there's no longer this need to avoid. Let's actually speak the truth and talk about how we're feeling
Yeah, and save people in the process. Absolutely. So one more for you. How about limited stories around relationships?
Yeah.
How many times have we seen it? I don't know if your own life, I know I've been there,
Yeah.
where you're in relationships that don't serve you,
Right.
but you're in it. And so you're just sort of, I guess, somewhere between not totally unhappy, but not unhappy enough to do something about it, right? To
Right.
change.
Right.
And I'm sure you've encountered this with your clients and maybe even in
Yeah.
your own life.
Yep.
So what about the story of, well, I'm already in the relationship. Well, it's not so bad. Well, sometimes, or could get better. What are some stories you've seen in relationships
Yep.
where people got stuck and jailed
Yeah.
by their own kindness, if you will,
Yeah.
versus turned it around for an empowering story?
Yeah. So the relationship one is challenging because we're modeling our parents and what we saw growing up from love, right?
At a subconscious level,
Subconscious level, right? We're attracting a relationship based on what we saw growing up. And so what I have found with this one specifically, and a lot of people come to me and they're sabotaging their own health because they're in a relationship that isn't serving them.
Yes, I've been there, to be honest. So
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
And my partner eats pizza and drinks beer, and that's how we translate love is on Friday night, going out. And so one, you have to redefine what a healthy relationship looks like. And I think if you didn't see that model growing up as a child, you actually have to start surrounding yourself by really healthy relationships.
Examples of people
who truly represent what love feels like for you. Not what you were modeled, not what you believe love looks like, but what feels good for you. Who do you surround yourself with?
That, yeah.
And one of my friends was going through a really challenging time in his relationship. And for 2 months, they only went out with couples that were empowering, inspiring, uplifting, positive. They weren't around single people. They weren't around people that were clinging. It totally transformed their relationship because they were able to model and see examples of relationships that were empowering. Because again, we know what doesn't work, but so often we don't have that reframe. So often we don't know what actually does. And we don't know what works. We stay comfortable because we can't even visualize what it would be like to be in a different circumstance. And so
true. And it's almost like we don't have context unless we're shown it.
Right.
And I think that also plays into the narrative of why social media causes people to feel envy and jealousy, because we're looking for these, we know what not to do. And so when, Tiffany on Instagram looks like she knows what to do, that becomes our reference.
Right.
Because we've never consciously created any positive examples around us on our own.
Right.
Very interesting.
And you're diving into the truth of relationships. And when you begin to surround yourself by relationships that are working, you see that they're not Instagram. They're not like, oh, life is perfect.
Hashtag couple
goals. I'm like, if you knew how much therapy my husband and I have done, you would be like shocked. Like we're always learning from each other, and we've been modeling our own parents the entire time, and we're learning to shift that. And like, it doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you a failure in relationship. It doesn't make you a failure at your health or your entrepreneurship to go and get support and help. And I think that's the one thing that we struggle with is asking for help. Every single time I ask people like, well, you're struggling. What's the problem? I don't want to ask for help. I don't want to feel like a failure. Asking for help is a failure. And I'm like, no, asking for help actually means that you're taking a stance for your truth and you're getting to a place where you'll feel more empowered.
Wow. Okay. And then talking about truth and empowerment, talk to me a little bit about how you later started incorporating your story into a lot of the work you do now, helping people overcome their own limitations, their own sort of stresses and anxieties to live a more fulfilled life, both in their mindset, their business, and also in their, in their health. Talk to me a little bit about how you started incorporating your story and why you started it. Why is it important for people out there to reach more people with their message and their story when they're afraid to be vulnerable?
Yeah, it was hard. It was very, very hard. I will not say it's easy. I think sharing on social media, speaking your story, talking about your pain is one of the hardest things to do. And I literally bow down to everyone who is able to actually communicate their story with the world with so much courage, because it is hard. It is very hard. And when I met my husband, he was like, you have this incredible story and you're not sharing it, and think of how many women. But until I went to a conference and I heard you were doing a disservice to the world by not sharing your story.
Wow.
In that moment, he took me to this conference, and Sean Stevens had said, you are doing a disservice by not sharing your story. And that moment, things clicked, and I said, okay, I'm willing to sit down with you and learn copy. I'm willing to learn how to communicate my message from a place of truth, from a place of compassion, from a place of understanding what I went through. And my greatest fear was I would be judged. Like my greatest fear is like, you put yourself in this circumstance as a model. Of course you have an eating disorder, right?
Yeah, you're in the business of being
You're
judged.
in a business of being judged. This is what you signed up for. And I was so terrified that people would say, who are you to talk about not feeling good in your body? You're 5'10", you're blonde, you've had everything growing up. Look at your life.
Yeah, you have no context.
You have
of
no
tough
context
situations,
of like having, and I was like, if you only knew the struggle, if you only knew what I actually, had to do to continue to live and all of the pain that I've been through. And I got to a place where I just didn't care about the judgment anymore.
You said, screw it.
I said, screw it. And what changed for me was, and you hear a lot about this, and it's very cliche again, but the truth is when you start to hear people say, your story changed my life, your work changed my life, you standing up for this truth changed my life. A very recent example was I got my breast implants out. I got really sick from my implants. I was terrified to share my story.
This was recently?
Yeah, because again, I put the implants in. Of course, I'm going to be judged. Like, I got sick from them, something I actually did to myself. And I remember thinking to myself, like, this is just one I'll just, put in the books. And,
I won't be this vulnerable.
Yeah, I won't be this vulnerable.
No one has to know that one.
And I was like, no, I have to share because I was sick for 2 years with my implants, and I just feel like I'm doing a disservice for that girl out there. And what happened is those posts have been, of all my posts ever, those posts have been the most impactful in terms of like the messages and the emails and the women getting their implants out and the women that are also sick. And from a non-judgmental place of breast implants or anything, it really doesn't. That's not what this is about.
Right. It's
about sharing my experience so that other women, if they come across it and have a similar experience that they're facing, can relate. And that's all. It's not shaming the industry. It's not being judgmental towards it. It's nothing about that. It's about, this is my experience. This is what I went through. And I've gotten backlash. I've gotten men who have written me and like, you looked better with them in. You should have left them in. Or like these crazy things. You're like, how can you be like writing me these insane messages?
It's insane.
And I take a deep breath and I breathe through it and I'm like, it's worth it. It's worth it because of the women who are writing me. And I think that's why we all do this work, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, same reason when I started the show, a lot of people don't know, but the show is actually born out of a breakup. I was in a depression. I was in a rough situation. Fast forward 2 years, I would have no idea that we'd be here shooting these amazing interviews and telling these amazing stories from people who've also had their rock bottoms and are now empowering the world, So I guess we're kindred spirits in that. We've turned the rock bottom into impact and helping other people who are where we once were.
Yeah.
So that's been incredible. Now, let's talk about, you're married to what's considered to be one of the greatest copywriters in the world.
Yeah.
Craig Clemens.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about copywriting for people who don't know how important copy is.
Yeah.
What is copy and what does it take to be an effective copywriter? Whether you're just writing a caption for Instagram or you're selling stuff online. And obviously with the advent of social media and digital marketing, more and more people are sharing their passion with the world. So copy is going to become important.
Yeah.
So can you share a little bit about, what it's like to be married to the world's greatest copywriter, what you've learned about copywriting, anything in regard to that?
Well, it's intimidating. And for the first couple of years, I pushed it away. I was like, I don't want to be salesy. I don't want to write sales pages. And I kept pushing away. And I'm like, but my message isn't getting communicated. And so this isn't about sales copy. This isn't about like putting something up that converts and split testing. This is just about learning how to communicate your message across audiences, right? And as Craig always says, it's about getting in the conversation of your client and your prospect and the person that's reading your story and meeting them at their pain point. And for many years, I didn't. I would meet people at, what if something happened someday? I didn't meet them right where they were today. And the difference in my business was, was like night and day. And so I really...
Just by shifting the conversation.
And meeting people where they are right now.
Yeah, like Craig says, enter the conversation in their own mind.
Yes. Enter that conversation. What are they facing? What are their struggles? What are they pain? What are their hopes? What are their dreams? From a place of truth, from a place of authenticity, from a place of empowerment, and deliver over value, educate, give people you know, when they are searching for something else and they find you, they're just so excited because you're giving them so much information and so much. It's like a light to their day, right? Like this inspiration that they found you, and that's not from a sales place. That's just from like what you do all day long, just overvalue, right? Giving them so much value that they walk away feeling like they're a better person.
Feeling like, wow, something triggered them in a new direction.
Right.
So talk a little bit about the programs you have now for people who might be interested or hear this conversation. They're like, oh my God, I got to get in on this. I got to learn this.
Yeah.
Share with us some of the programs you have coming out. I know also you just got a new book.
Yeah.
It's going to be coming out. Congratulations on that.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited. Comes out 2020 and it's all about what we're talking about, the reframe, right? Because most of us know not what to do, but don't have that reframe for replacing what's not serving us. And so my programs, I love working with people one-on-one. I think it's the thing that really lights me up and inspires me, whether that's leading retreats or events or workshops or just one-on-one in person. But above that, for women who can't afford private coaching, I also knew what that felt like, right? To be like, oh, just go get a coach, but then
they might not
be able to, or the opportunity. So I'm relaunching a weight loss program with meditation for weight loss. And then I'm also working on a confidence building platform through mindfulness and meditation for women to join. And there's an online coaching element, and it's basically a membership model. But I'm really excited for that because I think with community and women coming together, we can really support each other in shifting these ideas around what makes someone feel sexy. It's called Meditate Sexy. So what is the truth behind what makes you feel sexy and alive and joyful and excited to be on this planet?
That's amazing. Now, what about in your own life? What are some of the stories, the limited ones that maybe were the toughest to deal with, maybe things you haven't shared before that have allowed you to go from being in that situation where you don't know what you're going to do, you don't know how you're going to make money, your career, here you are with these disorders, you get your son, your car. If you could look back and like knowing what you know now, for people out there struggling, like maybe they can relate to you. Like what was a deep thing you felt that maybe was the toughest story to get over? Maybe you're still to a certain degree getting over it now or just recently, that you'd be willing to share that you haven't shared before. And how did you get around?
I think the one that's been a constant theme throughout this conversation is that it doesn't have to be so hard. And again, that's so simple, right?
Yes, but it leaks in everything. Business, life, health.
Totally right. And I see a lot of these entrepreneurs who, they have all these systems in place and they build out all these funnels and they, they have all these projects that are just about to launch. And it's the same with health, right? It's like there's 17 things built out and none of them are actually launching. Because we're addicted to the struggle. And we're addicted to that fight, and we're addicted to the pain, and we're addicted to the American dream, and the American dream is climbing. It's
hustle,
like the hustle, and
shout out Gary V.
Right. And it is hard work, and it does take time. And there's days that I'm like, oh, it'd be nice to work for someone else and not have this pain. Like that is a truth. There's days I wake up and I don't want to be an entrepreneur, but at the end of the day, it's my choice, and I just believe that as I keep telling myself it can be easy, it can be easy, it can be easy, and with the ease comes more impact, right? The greater things flow, the more impact that you have because you're just reaching and there's this momentum that's created behind it.
So for inheriting those beliefs, does it go back to, would you encourage people, going back to what you said about surrounding themselves with positive examples of it? So say it's health, say it's money, say it's a healthy relationships. Would you say that's probably the most, aside from going within, would you say that's step 2, maybe the most practical things for people to do is go get around where it's better first, see it, touch it, interact with it?
Yeah. For me, I moved from New York into LA and knew no one, literally nobody. No one. Like I maybe knew a couple people, but not like actually deep friendship or, and I remember telling myself like, this is a story that it's going to be hard. Like, this is a story that I'm not going to have community, friendship, that my life is going to suck, that it's going to be so hard, whatever. And I, in the moment, shifted and I said, no, this doesn't have to be so hard. I just need to be the curator of my life. And I started hosting these mastermind dinners and inviting entrepreneurs.
Which are amazing,
and thank you. And just bringing people together and women together. And was just like, I'm going to surround myself by badass women who are doing amazing things and inspiring. And that's all I want to do for the next year and a half. And so while running my business, I was, running these other masterminds with my husband and creating these community events every month. And just, I remember we made a commitment to ourselves that we would be surrounded by incredible humans. And that's what we did. And from that, every single day, I'm inspired by individuals like yourself and other entrepreneurs that are just doing amazing things. And it gets lonely as an entrepreneur.
Oh,
it really
absolutely.
does. Working from my home every day, working from my office alone. Now I have people around me, but
there's
for
a lot of people that
time,
can't relate out there. You can't, and maybe you can relate on certain things, but not on the deep things,
right.
And it's a struggle, and it's so hard. So you need to vent even more than anybody else, probably. You got even fewer options too. So I hear you.
Yeah. So it's really great to just have that community, and now being in masterminds with women who are just doing really amazing things has really transformed my relationships with what's possible. And I think, my biggest insecurity, I think, of all times is failure or letting people down. And when I think about that, and I think, well, it'd be really easy to push this book deal aside, because what if I let my publisher down? Or what if I, don't write the book of my dreams? Or what if I, those stories come up all day long.
Yeah, coming from a place of lack or scarcity.
Coming from a place of lack, of disappointing someone. I have to just continue to rely on these communities that I've built and these women who, I call them and I say, listen, I'm terrified of finishing this book and putting it in print and it's there forever.
Yeah.
I am terrified
of
never being able to change it or hitting delete on the blog post and taking it down or my post.
That's
this is terrifying.
Yeah.
And having them around and having other women who have gone through it is the most inspiring thing.
And have you found that having masterminds like that has allowed things to flow more smoothly, more effortlessly? Talk to me a little bit about that flow that you talk about, whether it be with money, health, relationships.
I think when you have the combination of doing the internal work and tapping in and knowing your truth and having support, that's the best combination, because you can take all of the recommendations from the women in your circles and these different communities of entrepreneurs, and you can say what works for me. It's the same thing with health, right? We have more nutrition information than ever before on this planet. You can Google diets and millions of posts come up.
Right.
You can, we have access to dozens of health podcasts, but until you're able to take the different pieces and say, okay, I have all this knowledge, but what actually works for me? Because we're seeing, diets actually don't work and they make people have lower self-esteem and self-worth and they decrease self-confidence. I think that's because they don't have the missing piece, the hack, which is tapping in and saying, what do I apply to me? And we're getting so lost in all of the content. And do
you think it's because people just want a quick fix? They don't want to experiment. They don't want to try things. They don't want it to take a long time. They want it in 90 days and 60 days and 30 days.
I think they want to place the blame on someone else. I think they want to place the blame on someone else. So when diet doesn't work, you can say, well, of course it didn't work. It's,
Yeah.
It's this person's fault.
It's the trainer.
It's the
book,
trainer.
the diet.
Exactly.
It's not me.
Exactly. So when we cannot, no one wants to take responsibility for themselves anymore.
Right.
It's insane. This is a story I hold. It's it's a lot easier to blame my business coach of why my funnel isn't working than to blame myself, right?
Right.
And so, so we have to start taking responsibility that our lives are really a projection of what we are creating, what we're feeling, our thoughts, our emotions, versus I'm going to blame my business coach. I'm going to blame my relationship coach because she can't solve my relationship. I'm going to blame my trainer because he hasn't whipped me in shape, but yet I still go home and eat the same. It's
bag of Cheetos.
Exactly. And so when we stop blaming other people and we start taking responsibility for ourselves, everything shifts, because we're like, okay, I see that knowledge, I see that research, I see that science. Is it applicable to me? And then we integrate it. And if it doesn't work, when I found out I had a gluten sensitivity, dairy sensitivity, I was actually shifted the reframe from, I can no longer eat gluten or dairy, to, wow, I'm so grateful that I found this out because I'm going to be healthier down the road.
It's about taking control of the narrative.
Exactly.
Instead of saying, shit, this is my situation, or I'm this, or I'm that.
Now I can never have pizza on a Friday night.
Exactly.
I can never drink beer again. while I'm watching football, whatever the story is that I hear these stories all day long, and they were the truth for me for a very long time. And I just started switching everything to a place of gratitude. Thank you so much for telling me that funnel doesn't work. Now I can go do something different. Thank you so much for telling me that I can no longer eat X, Y, and Z, and I have an allergy to my favorite thing, which is chocolate. Thank you, because now I won't be sick of it. Yeah, I won't have migraines anymore. Like shifting those conversations.
Right.
Thank you for my relationship for showing up and showing me where I'm not serving in the greatest, capacity for long-term happiness. Thank you.
Which is very important, and I think for a lot of people listening, pay attention to that, because what Sarah's really talking about is taking control of the narrative. That when things happen, you decide the label, and the label that you place on that experience becomes your experience. So something, what could be your rock bottom or break up or break down could really end up being a breakthrough if you'll just literally change the wording in your own mind.
Really.
And it's pivot. It's these small pivots. It's not the big things. It's these little pivots that change the trajectory of where you can take it. So it's very, very powerful point, Sarah. Now let me ask you this. Looking back, knowing what you know now, what would be your best advice to that younger Sarah that was struggling and looking for answers, knowing what you know now?
Yeah, wow. So many things. I think, so one of the things I look back on my life that I was too cool for, and I was like, this is woo-woo, and then no longer, was meditation. So I grew up with a meditation teacher as my father, and yet I pushed it away. And I just think, had I had someone in my teenage college years helping me reintegrate these mindfulness practices, I would have seen where the pain was coming from. And I wouldn't have been so driven to find happiness and self-esteem and self-worth in external things outside of myself. Because the whole reason I was in the fashion industry, I was chasing this feeling of self-validation, self-worth, and every day I was getting hit with, you're not worthy enough, and then I would chase it again, and you're not worthy enough, and I would chase it again, and you're not worthy enough. And had I had someone to support me in looking within during those times, I don't know if I would have had to go down this rabbit hole of pain. I think I would have dabbled in it, and I would have recognized what I was chasing, but I don't think it would have been a 10-year journey. Granted, I'm grateful for that.
Right.
And so I think if we can teach our children, if we can teach teenagers, if we can teach younger girls to really look within, and entrepreneurs that are, regardless, just, learn.
People in general,
in general. We will dramatically shift the culture of this country. Dramatically.
It's powerful. Now, I got to ask one last question before we play this game that we have with every guest at the end. My last question is for entrepreneurs out there, because a lot of them are listening, and a lot of them, I'm sure, wrote down a bunch of notes, got inspired, got excited. They're going to check you out, follow you.
Thank you.
But for people out there who really want to get their money right, let's face it, that's a dominant thing, right? They got bills, they got overhead, they got a team. Obviously, they want to scale, right? Whatever it is, for entrepreneurs listening out there, what would be Sarah and Stewart's best advice if they're sort of sacrificing other things, right? So maybe their health's not in point. Have you found that actually, maybe when they face a business challenge or they're stuck, that by focusing here on their mindset or by focusing on their health, that the business gets better when they return to it, that you don't have to actually work on the business for the business to get better?
Right.
Just if you could go in depth with the best that you've learned on that regard for people listening so they can, wake up.
Yeah.
Well,
we could work on the business and the business side of things all day long. But again, we had this, coming back to, if we don't feel worthy of the business growing or scaling, it doesn't matter how much work we put in. We will be hustling for the rest of our lives. And so we have to shift that conversation that's happening within us of what do we feel worthy of. And that, it's a very long-winded answer, and it's, but at the end of the day, really, really looking at where your story is coming from, where is your mindset coming from, is it cultural, is it society, is it childhood programming, how do you feel today? Because, again, we're chasing a feeling, and if we can feel that feeling right now internally by not chasing anything and finding peace within, then we're going to draw to ourselves all the things that we truly want and desire.
Happily achieve instead of only get happy once you achieve.
Focus on happiness now. Focus on peace of mind now. Focus on decreasing anxiety, stress. Focus on clarity, which you talk a lot about. And you get that through quieting the mind. And you make better decisions. You don't make good decisions from a place of fight or flight.
And you don't attract good people, customers, clients.
Exactly.
In that state of being as well. Or write good copy. Okay, very powerful. Any last pieces of advice for people out there in any realm, relationships, health, fitness, anything like that you feel might be important that you've noticed maybe a pattern of in your clients and you wish you could tell the world that's important for people to really, really focus on?
Yeah. So
there's
many.
So much.
How many? How do I pick this? Pick one.
Be guided by what you're most excited about. What's pulling you to share?
Yeah. So what's pulling me to continue to have this conversation is statistically in this country, things aren't getting better from a health perspective. We're looking at, a third of our country's obese. We're spending $200 billion in medical care costs on obesity. Like 30 million women in this country and 70 million women worldwide are suffering from eating disorders.
Wow.
Culturally, from a health perspective, things aren't getting better, but we have more nutrition advice than ever before. And I believe that the missing link is mindfulness and meditation and looking within and decreasing our nervous system and regulating it and getting out of fight or flight and looking at stress and all these things that we just keep fighting, more, overconsumption.
Yeah, because it seems like by working, I'm doing something, I'm activity, I'm being productive. But in fact, some of the most productive things you can ever do for your life or your business are literally to just sit and think sometimes.
And the top CEOs all in common meditate. Like over and over, I hear the same thing. They meditate. They're mindful. They quiet.
I have to ask, have you indeed seen that? Because you guys do masterminds with some of the highest level people on the planet in business. Have you actually, in fact, seen that the higher up you go, the achievement scale, if you will, that actually the more practices they have for mindfulness, or the more they value that, or what have you seen to people out there who might not have those references or see it, right? They might only see the hustle, like no, I have to work until my face falls off to make all the money or to build the business or whatever. Yeah,
it's shifting. I see it now where they're taking care of their health, they're taking care of their well-being, they're putting these things first. Because as I mentioned before, one right decision from a place of clarity increases your business exponentially. One wrong decision can destroy your business. And Elliot Bisnow told me that. He's the founder of Summit. And I remember we were sitting at dinner and he said, I've literally built my entire business meditating. And I was like...
Founder of what company?
Summit Series.
Gotcha, yeah.
Yeah, and he was like, I've built my entire business meditating. I'm like, tell me more, because that sounds great.
Yeah.
And we think, and it's the same thing with weight loss. Like we think, well, I'm going to sit there. How is that burning calories? There's absolutely no way that's going to actually help me lose weight. But it actually does, because it impacts the behavior, and that then impacts your weight loss. So it indirectly impacts productivity, indirectly impacts weight loss, it indirectly impacts your health, your choices, your decisions, how you show up in your relationships. You're more compassionate, loving, caring, kind. All of the things that we want more of happen because of how we're reshifting and reprogramming.
I love that. So in conclusion, what you're really saying is by taking the time to calibrate the compass, to calibrate ourselves, those little moments, we're sort of aligning everything else way more than if we, sit there and try to work on it or stress or hustle or work harder.
Exactly.
In fact, it's really about going within and then having the answers naturally flow without.
Yeah, that theory that if you lost something, it's actually right in front of you, but you just can't see it. Like you're blocking it and you're running around your house frantically looking for the keys, but they're literally right in front of you. That's what I feel. I feel like so often with business, we're looking at all this chaos and like struggle and like sifting through all of it.
Assuming
and the answer is right there in front of us. And the people that we do interview that have these profound businesses or these ideas or these things that change the world, it comes from clarity. It comes from peace of mind. It comes from being quiet and still and taking a step back, pushing aside all the things that we're taught and trained and all the ways that aren't working. And like, how do we just pinpoint that one thing that is? And that thing comes to surface, I think, when we get everything else out of the way.
I love that. Sarah, thank you so much for being on the
So
show.
welcome.
Before we wrap up, we have this game.
Okay,
And
what's
this is
the
called
game?
First Things First.
Okay.
So basically, the way the game works is I'm going to rifle off 10 words or phrases, and then you just tell me the first word or phrase that comes to mind.
Okay.
Okay?
It's so scary.
Yeah. So the only rule is that you can't repeat yourself twice.
Okay, so I'm it's the first thing that comes to
First
mind.
word or phrase that comes to mind.
Phrase.
Word or phrase,
Okay.
either or.
Okay.
So I'm going to rifle them off, and then you just tell me the first word or phrase that comes to mind.
Okay.
Make sense?
Okay.
All right, first word. Meditation.
Peace.
Money.
Freedom.
Failure.
Success.
Your marriage.
Happiness.
Your business.
Happiness.
You can't repeat yourself twice.
Oh, I can't repeat myself.
Yeah.
My business. Impact.
Your past.
Healed.
Challenges.
Blessings.
Fulfillment.
The journey.
True health.
A gift.
I love that. And then the last one, you ready? Passion.
Passion. My life.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for bringing your life's work
Thank
to the
you
show
so
today,
much.
Sarah.
That was so hard. I'm like.
Thanks for being on the show today. Thank you guys for tuning into this episode. We'll see you guys next time. And until then, thank you for being one of the passionate.
If you guys enjoyed that video, be sure to hit that subscribe button right now, because every week we bring you the very best in personal development content, interviews, and insight to help inspire you to take your life and your dreams and make them a reality. And also, if you want to know how to book dream guests the same way I have, you can check the link below for my top 3 secrets. So if you have a podcast or a show or whatever it is and you want to collaborate with them, if you click that link below, I'll give you those top 3 secrets to help you get in touch with anybody. And also, don't forget that The Passionate Few is available on media platforms as well. So you can subscribe to the podcast. And until next time, thank you for being one of the passionate few.